So tokenization should be thought of no different than how you structure most other investment strategies. And if you look across most portfolios today, they're held in a mutual fund or an ETF, or they may be wrapped as a futures product. There's lots of different exposures that come in different formats. Tokenization should be thought of just like that, where you're going to be able to access different strategies. Some of them are going to be crypto related. They might be Bitcoin portfolio in a token format, which means they're powered by a blockchain and they're held in a wallet.
So talk about, you mentioned crypto. Do you own Bitcoin? What's going on with the crypto markets? What's your best advice to an investor?
Well, I think number one, investors need to know that they need new tools for performance going forward. So everyone already typically has equities and fixed income, and even private markets are pretty well distributed. And right now with tokenization, you're seeing an unbundling of access to more investors who can access private markets. Now, crypto is an adjacent orthogonal asset class that adds diversification and it adds excess return through positive skew to your portfolios. And so when we think about Bitcoin in particular, which is the largest crypto asset in the industry, that asset is a store of wealth. It's a store of value and is thought of and held in portfolios much like gold is held in portfolios. So a lot of investors, when they're thinking about their portfolios, they typically start with, how am I going to offset inflation? What's my expected return over equities? Can I outperform the market? And when you think about that and you look across different asset classes, Bitcoin absolutely should be in your portfolio as part of that package.
But do you own it, Anthony?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you eat your own cooking, so
Absolutely.
to speak, which I think is really important. A lot of people will provide advice and then they don't actually have ownership, so I think that's important. You used to run pensions at BlackRock, is that correct?
That's right.
And now talk to me about your role. How has it evolved since you joined Coinbase Asset Management?
So I joined Coinbase in 2021, and my remit at that time was to bring my pensions and my sovereign clients with me to help them do this first thing, which is acquire Bitcoin, right? Because the view for that is that they're looking for more ways to add diversification and upside return. And Bitcoin absolutely was and remains one of the best opportunities that they could possibly put in their portfolio too. We're thrilled to partner with Apex, who's our fund administrator for all of our funds. We also handle crypto. And so we have all of the infrastructure and expertise because we're part of Coinbase to handle digital asset markets and the products therein, like Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin yield strategy, what it does is actually seeks to outperform Bitcoin. And so a lot of investors who are thinking about how they should allocate to the space, they can go passive beta and get the passive position of Bitcoin. Many investors already hold Bitcoin today and they want to produce income on top of that. And so that's what we do better than the beta instrument itself.
So you mentioned investors positioning Bitcoin as kind of like a hedge in their portfolio, so to speak. And could it also be not just a hedge against markets, but inflation? The Fed's not raising rates and left rates unchanged, but inflation is heating up. Oil prices are up.
So if you go back to the Roman era, right? They debased their currency.
Like intentionally.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
The average monetary debasement is 7 to 10% every year for the last 70 years. And it's called a silent tax. Now, historically, that silent tax has been pretty controlled. At least we like to think it's been pretty controlled. Set that with equity market returns, private equity returns, venture type returns. Those are now no longer satisfying the offset, the true offset of what we know the money supply.
So when you
increase is
look
going
at the value of your cash, even if you have other alternatives to offset it, you're saying that's still the real rate of return when you factor in inflation is still negative.
Negative on bonds right now.
Yeah.
Right. So if you own treasuries or corporates, right, you're essentially at zero or negative real return. On equities, depending on what you use for your risk premium. If you plug gold's return, if gold is a true store of value,
Gold's doing really well.
You're flat.
Yeah.
You've made no money from the equity markets. So you have to think about your portfolio differently to offset monetary debasement. And that's what Bitcoin does really well. It's a liquidity play. Whenever the federal government comes in and dumps liquidity into the system, typically that goes sometimes directly to the banks. Most of the time it gets into consumers' wallets.
And they spend, demand exceeds supply, creating inflation in the vicious cycle that you mentioned.
Most of that money goes into equities, it goes into real estate after they paid off their debt,
Propping
if
it
they
up.
pay off their debt. And so you have to think about that also happens to Bitcoin. And so what Bitcoin does really well is when we get into these environments where the Fed is going to pump liquidity in. We're coming into that. We're lowering rates this year. Bitcoin responds to that environment really well. And we're coming back into that era. And what's important about tokenization here is we think the next cycle is going to be defined by the technology and infrastructure upgrade, where treasuries are being re-domiciled into tokenized products. Dollar, fiat, is being reformatted into stable coins. All of that infrastructure upgrades happening behind the scenes in real time, right? And that's changing the way global trade and global commerce is happening. And if you're a believer that that's happening, which we are certainly that, you're going to have to look at this space and go, do I think more people will be using these networks?
You're either in or you're going to be left behind. Final thoughts or takeaways. What's something you want people to know about Coinbase Asset Management that they may not be aware of? Something that's important, an important initiative.
We've built the market structure for that to be here today for millions of customers. We have over 100 million customers worldwide. Next is now bringing financial services and bringing asset management and wealth advisory.